Hi, I'm Peter Westerby, and I am delighted to be here. I love publishing with Practical Action Press, and it's great. We're celebrating 50 years in the same way we've been celebrating Schumacher's Small is Beautiful.
Hello, it's Linda Jones. I'm a longtime gender equality and social inclusion expert, and I've been working with Practical Action Publishing for probably at least 25 years, which is about half of the time since they were founded 50 years ago. And I'd like to congratulate Practical Action Publishing on such an amazing journey over the last 50 years. So happy 50th anniversary.
My name is Geoffrey Payne, and I'm proud to have published 4 books with the Intermediate Technology Development Group and its reincarnation as Practical Action.
Which of Practical Action's authors have most inspired me over the years? There's only one answer. Robert Chambers, a total legend. He's thoughtful, he's kind, he's revolutionary, he's brilliant, and he's stuck with Practical Action, and Practical Action has stuck with him over decades in which he's done profound and positive things to thinking within the aid and development sector. So thank you, Robert. Thank you, Practical Action.
And I just want to start, I'm going to put up the training for transformation. There's about 5 in this series. I kind of call them my go-to how to do what's kind of understood as Freirean approaches to community development, and I love these books. I always just come back to them. And I also love that Practical Action have published books like, Deborah Eads and Duncan Green's, from Oxfam. So they're books that hold policy practice from people that have been in the game of development for many, many years. I love that Practical Action Press support writing from practitioners who are also deep thinkers.
I've been most inspired by the work of Malcolm Harper. Malcolm has such great experience. He's written so many things for Practical Action Publishing, always focusing on poverty and economic development, whether that is financial inclusion or value chains or market systems, enterprise development, a lot on financial inclusion, but he hasn't limited himself to that. And I really appreciate his very practical approach to his writing. Brings in lots of really great examples from his vast experience, and that's why I very much have enjoyed Malcolm Harper's books.
The most important influence is that of Bernd Schumacher. Now, he didn't publish with Practical Action Publishing because it didn't exist. He was the founder of it and wrote an enormously influential book called Small is Beautiful, Economics as if People Mattered. The second influence is that of George McRoby, his colleague, who also was very influential in Practical Action, who wrote a follow-up book called Small is Possible. The best book, I think, in terms of my interest on housing and land was by Theo Schilderman and Mikhail Lyons, called Build Back Better, Delivering People-Centered Housing Construction at Scale.
There have been so many Practical Action writers who have inspired my work. I'm thinking Malcolm Harper, Joanna Ledgerwood, Candace Nelson, but especially Stuart Rutherford. His work on the financial diaries in Bangladesh, documented in The Poor and Their Money, was really important to me as a graduate student and has come into my work on the financial diaries here in Kenya. I've also had the pleasure of working with Stuart professionally, and that's been really fun. It was so rewarding to see Stuart's commitment to really understanding the lives of low-income people, but also his commitment to bringing that sincerity of listening into organizations that he collaborates with in the financial inclusion space.
The importance of history and lessons learned, a little bit tricky, this one. I don't think we want to be a prisoner of history. I'm always skeptical about best practice being transferred from one place to another. But if it's done right, history challenges orthodoxy. It's like a trip to the brain gym. It gives you new ideas. And I'm a big fan of economic history, for example, because it challenges some of the kind of received wisdom of structural adjustment and liberalization and some of the stuff that's been handed down to developing countries over the years by the World Bank, the IMF and donors. History teaches you to look at that differently and try and understand what actually has led to development.
Why are books so important in this field? I think it's a few things. One, we get to have an archive of thought, and if we're in the midst of doing development work, practice, thinking, how great that we can stand on the shoulders of people before us, giants, what I call the ancestors of our work, people that have done a lot of thinking. And there it is in writing, etched in the archive of books. And I love going back to books. And when I get stuck with thinking, all I need to do is some reading. So you pull books off the shelf, you read, it gets the thinking going, which informs the practice. So that's really what's important to me.
Well, I think the value of the knowledge that's created by practical action is the fact that it stays relevant, and it stays relevant because it's the basis for what we are doing now in development, all the learning that's collected, but it allows us to go back and review the journey of that learning and also assists in us not recreating things that were tried in the past and didn't work. Of course, we can do that and we may have new approaches, but I really like the fact that that knowledge is captured for our specific field, because our field is not captured as much in the literature, particularly because a lot of the publishing, or mainly the publishing of practical action, some is by academics, but much of the writing, including in the journal or in the books, is done by development practitioners, those who have experience on the ground and those who are both from the North and the South. So the knowledge collected there is very relevant to our work today and can continue informing what we do.
Now, at the heart of their anniversary, Practical Action is asking, what are the enduring relevance of past experience or lessons learned for subsequent practice and policy? And I think the really sad thing is that most of the key issues in arguments that we are dealing with today, inequality, the climate crisis, and political instability, all these issues have been known about for decades, but they have not been addressed. And so the objective, I think, of that information is that it needs to be reinterpreted, repackaged for contemporary application.
The importance of lasting knowledge is to have a documentation of the history of the evolution of development thinking. I know it's been really meaningful to me to be able to go back and see the way that ideas have evolved over time.
What should a great book provide? It should provide, I think, great case studies, obviously. It should help you ask the right questions. It should give you a sense of the wider possibilities in whatever issue it's covering and how to ask the right questions to get some interesting ideas for how you make things better.
But what is important about a good book in this field of development for me is ultimately that it's inspiring. I'm aware we can get a lot of information off the web now, but to read a book that inspires me from beginning to end, that holds story of work, theory, which really is just good ideas, practice, which is how people do things, and even the biography of the author. For me, those are kind of the crucial ingredients of a good book.
In my mind, a great development practice or policy book is one that is grounded, as I mentioned with Malcolm's books, very grounded in what is going on the ground. It's not as theory, it has theory and it's grounded on theory or frameworks for analysis, but it's very practical in its approach to how it shows evidence and also how it recommends how other things that others can do going forward. The learnings are practical as well. And so I think for me, that's the most important thing, that it inspires your own work, it challenges you. But I guess the other thing would be it also deals with hard topics, and hard topic is poverty alleviation. And for all the work we've done, we know there is an increasing divide internationally, but that doesn't mean our work has been for naught. So understanding that through books and journals that Practical Action has published, I think that's very valuable.
The third question is what makes a great development practice or policy book is to follow up on that point by saying that it should use statistics and scientific evidence to present it in ways which relate to people's interests, needs, and concerns.
While working on my own PhD dissertation on the digital economy here in Kenya, I've gone back to works like Kenneth King's seminal thinking around informality. That's been really important to my work in seeing what's changed and what hasn't in the ways that we make sense of the livelihoods of low-income people. The kind of inductive description that he uses and many other Practical Action authors is really powerful. That kind of commitment to understanding is enduring even as development fads come and go.
Biggest surprise for my own work? Well, in 2008, I published my first book with Practical Action, which was From Poverty to Power. And when you send in the manuscript, there's this terrible silence. So I thought I'd start a little blog just to keep having conversations with people while I was waiting for the book to come out. And it very rapidly became clear that the blog, which was also called From Poverty to Power, was getting many more readers than the book was ever going to get. And 15 years on, I'm still writing From Poverty to Power, and it's still just a lovely experience editing and writing that blog. And that was a total surprise that came from publishing a book with Practical Action.
What surprised me as an author? Okay, so this is what I've learned as an author. 1, you write a book, gets published. 2, you hope people buy the book, and it's exciting when they do. But I've learned that when people buy the book, it doesn't mean they read it. So it's even more exciting when they read the book. And what surprises me and always makes my heart move is when a reader writes to me and says thank you. Because as a writer, you don't get a lot of feedback unless you're a superstar, and like one of those author superstars. And so when a reader writes this long or just beautiful email and says, thank you, Peter, I've read your book, it's transformed my thinking, it's inspired me, I just think, it's all worth it.
I worked with Calvin Miller from the FAO on the agricultural value chain finance book, and that was well over a decade ago. I think it might have been published in 2010. Could have even been 2007. It was quite a while ago. And what is surprising to me is it's still widely read and widely quoted today. I knew at the time it was a good book. I mean, Calvin brought so much knowledge of finance, I had more experience in value chains. So we really put what we knew together in that book. And so I do think it's still very relevant today. And it covered a lot of territory. So that really surprised me about the longevity of that book.
Publishing my book, Living on Little, ended up releasing the book in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We released it in September of 2020, and I gave my launch lecture into an empty auditorium at the University of Nairobi. A lot of hopes that I had to be able to share my work in person with people at book talks around Kenya were dashed because it just wasn't possible. So I found it really exciting when about 2 years later, I was contacted by someone in my office building who saw my name on an invitation to a Christmas party for the entire office community. And she reached out and said, "You're the Julie Zolman. Oh my gosh, I loved your book." She had found it in a local Kenyan bookstore, and I was just delighted to see her enthusiasm. We had coffee, and she told me about specific passages that meant a lot to her work in business development services. And it was really moving to see this piece of research that I care so much about, that my team put so much of their hearts into, make an impact and reach an audience outside of those people that we've been able to get to know directly and sat in the same conference rooms together.
The amazing thing for me was the ability and the opportunity to go back to places I'd worked in before, renew acquaintances and friendships, and find out what lessons we could learn from what I'd been working on in the past.
Three words that describe my experience of working with you. I'm going to cheat slightly. So 2 words: committed and efficient, and a phrase: on the right side of history. And we need to remember that even in dark times.
I would say my experience with practical action could be described as values aligned. One of the things that was really important to me and my partners in putting together the book was that we'd be able to make this research available to a wide audience of Kenyan practitioners, educators, and students. So we were able to work with Practical Action to get on the same page very quickly about how we could keep the price point reasonable and make sure that the content could be open access so that all Kenyans could be able to read and engage with this work. To disagree with me, to have it launch new ideas, and I'm really grateful for that.
The final question, some words about working with Practical Action Press. One, it's personal. I've never met the people of Practical Action Press, but I feel like I've got to know them over the years. They're responsive with their email. They're personal in the way they relate. So that's beautiful. I'm grateful. I think I have things to say in the world based on my research, my writing, my experiences in development, and to have a publisher willing to publish your work, I'm grateful. And then the third thing is, I don't know, it's a sense of integrity working with Practical Action. They follow through. They've always followed up on what they say they're going to do in my working with them, and for that I'm really grateful also. They walk the talk of development, so awesome. Thank you.
You know, it's been great working with Practical Action. For me, to put it in 3 words, it's been inspiring. It's been very satisfying for me as an author and as an editor. And also, it's been fun. You know, I've had good friendships at Practical Action, through Practical Action, and, you know, through the journals as well as the book. So again, happy 50th anniversary. Job well done.
And finally, 3 words to describe my experience of working with Practical Action is: it is friendly, productive, and enjoyable. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and all very, very best wishes to Practical Action Publishing for the next 5 decades. Thank you.